Hi, I'm Madiha, a registered polysomnography technologist, and welcome to my channel Sleep Tech Guide. For many people, sleep looks normal from the outside. They go to bed, they wake up, but during the night, their breathing repeatedly stops and starts without them even realizing it. So, these repeated breathing disturbances are known as sleep related breathing disorders. And today, we focus on obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is a common condition that can lead to serious health issues. It is essential to understand the characteristics, symptoms, risk factors, and the diagnostic approaches associated with these disorders for effective management and treatment. So, the early detection and intervention it can significantly improve the patient outcomes and the quality of life. So, let's start by defining obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is characterized by repetitive episodes of partial or complete airway obstruction during sleep, and it leads towards the reduced or absent airflow despite continued effort to breathe, and usually oxygen desaturations and arousals from sleep. In simple words, it's a condition that the airway collapsed or blocked during the sleep, and you can see in this picture as well that this is the open airway and the air has been passed easily. But that is the narrowed airway and the air has been difficulty to pass. So the most important thing, it is still trying to breathe here. Okay, so the chest and abdomen are moving. The brain is sending signals to the breathe, but the airway is blocked. So we see the decline in airflow sensor. These episodes happen repeatedly throughout the night, lowers the oxygen level and disturbs the sleep. So now let's break down this further. First is the obstructive apnea. It is the complete cessation of airflow, means amplitude decreases to at least 90%, respiratory effort continues, and the duration should be at least 10 seconds or more than 10 seconds. Okay, and you can see that this is the normal picture. Air has been passed, which we discussed in previous slide as well. This is the apnea. And you can see that the airflow is coming, but there is an obstruction, so the air cannot be passed through the airway. So it is the complete cessation. As we say that this is the complete cessation of airflow. Second is hypopneas. Hypopneas refer to the partial reduction in airflow, not a complete stop. Some air is still moving, but it is not enough. You can see in this picture as well. Some air is moving from here. Okay. This reduction in airflow can cause a drop in oxygen levels or trigger a brief awakening of the brain known as arousals, which disrupts the normal sleep. So, simply we say apnea is a complete cessation, hypopnea is a partial reduction, but both repeatedly disturbs the sleep. This difference becomes much clearer when we look at this image. In the first pattern, we see obstructive apnea. Here we see obstructive apnea. This straight line represents the airflow completely stops and no air is moving in or out of the lungs. In the second one, we see hypopneas. Airflow is still present, but it's significantly reduced. And in the third one, we see the normal breathing. Airflow is regular and continuous. So apnea shows no airflow. Hypopnea shows reduced airflow and the normal breathing shows stable airflow. Before we move ahead, let's do a quick knowledge check. These questions are just to help you lock in the concepts. So pause for a second and think before the answers appear. So the question 1 is, which one of the best following defines an apnea event during a sleep study? There are 4 options. 20% reductions in airflow for 5 seconds, 50% reduction in airflow with no oxygen desaturation, complete cessation of airflow for at least 10 seconds, and shallow breathing causing arousals. We discussed the definition of obstructive apnea, that it is the complete cessation for at least 10 seconds. So the correct answer should be C. Good. Now the next question. What is the minimum reduction in airflow required to define a hypopnea event according to the common standards? What is the criteria of hypopnea? 30 to 90% reduction for at least 10 seconds. Okay, so the options are 10%, 20%, 30% and 50%. So what should be the answer? 30%. The next is, which of the following is the most common cause of obstructive apneas or hypopneas? Common cause we discussed previously as well. Neurological damage to the diaphragm, relaxation of throat muscles and narrowing of the upper airway, increased lung capacity and high altitude exposure. So the problem is obstructed, not a respiratory drive. So the answer should be narrowing of the upper airway. So now let's start with the associated events in sleep disturbance. There are three types of associated events which associate with the every sleep disturbances. Body jerks and limb movements. Sleep disturbance may manifest as body jerks or limb movement which are involuntary, and it can cause arousals due to the breathing difficulties. Second is the paradoxical breathing. What is the paradoxical breathing? It is the abnormal breathing that can occur when the chest and abdomen move in the opposite directions and indicating respiratory distress during the sleep. Third one is the arousal, which is the repeated EEG arousals occur in response to the obstructive events, and it disrupts the sleep continuity and normal sleep architecture. Most patients don't come and say, I think I have sleep apnea. They come with the symptoms. So these are the most important 5 symptoms of OSA, in which the loud snoring is often the first sign and the most common symptom of OSA. And when it occurs when the airflow is partially obstructed and it causes vibration of the throat muscle tissues. Second is gasping or choking. Patient also witnessed choking during the sleep, and it's very alarming and suggests the significant airway obstruction. Third is morning headaches. OSA patient experiences headaches upon waking up, and it's related to the oxygen deprivation and sleep fragmentation. Fourth one is the sweating. Why the sweating occurs? Due to the body's stress response from repeated arousals during the sleep. And the fifth one is excessive daytime sleepiness, which is a key symptom of obstructive sleep apnea, and it's caused by repeated apneas, hypopneas, and arousals from sleep. Now, who is at risk? Obesity is one of the strongest risk factors because excess tissue narrows the upper airway. Age and gender increases the likelihood due to anatomical and hormonal differences. And the man over 40 and postmenopausal women face higher risk. And certain anatomical variations like a narrow airway or the enlarged tonsils also play a major role. So understanding risk factors help us to identify the high-risk patients early. Next is the diagnosis and assessment. Once we suspect OSA, the next step is proper diagnosis. So first is the clinical evaluation. It helps us to assess the symptoms, risk factors, and the physical features, and provide the healthcare help to assess the likelihood of OSA, and this allowed for targeted investigations and treatment planning. The gold standard test is polysomnography, and what it records breathing, oxygen levels, and the sleep stages. And it provides valuable insights into the severity of the disorders. Third is the home sleep apnea testing. It is used for the selected patients. Home sleep apnea testing offers a convenient alternative to in-lab studies, and this provide simpler monitoring of breathing and oxygen levels through may not capture all aspects of sleep quality. Okay, before ordering a sleep study, we often use some screening tools. First is the Stop-Bing questionnaire. It helps to quickly identify the high-risk individuals, and it can assess through 8 key risk factors. Second is the Berlin questionnaire. It's focused on the snoring, daytime sleepiness, and the hypertension. And the third one is Epworth Sleepiness Score, which measures the subjective daytime sleepiness, and it helps to determine the symptom severity of OSA, quantifies how sleep a patient feels in daily routine. Now, what is the diagnostic criteria for sleep apnea? Once the sleep apnea is identified, the next important question is how important and how severe it is. So sleep apnea severity is not just based on symptoms, it's measured. And how we measure? The three features. These indices help classify the severity of sleep apnea. First is the respiratory disturbance index, second is apnea hypopnea index, and the third one is respiratory event related arousals, which we called RERAS. What is respiratory disturbance index? It include apneas, hypopneas, and the arousals. What is the apnea hypopnea index? It is the severity of sleep apnea based on the apneas and hypopneas. Then respiratory event related arousals. It includes the breathing difficulties that results in arousals and from sleep without the significant apnea event. So what is the difference between these three? RDI is the measurement of apneas, hypopneas, and the arousals. AHI is the calculation of apneas and hypopneas per hour of sleep, and the RERAS are the breathing difficulties are there, but they do not meet the criteria of apnea hypopnea, but it resulting with the arousal. So this is the RERA. Now, what is the OSA severity levels? First is mild OSA. It is 5 to 15 events per hour. It is calculated by the AHI. Second is the moderate OSA, which is 15 to 30 events per hour. It is also the AHI. Third is the severe OSA. So the AHI should be more than 30 events per hour. So remember, 5 to 15 is mild, 15 to 30 is moderate, and above 30 is severe. This classification helps to guide treatment decisions and highlight the urgency of intervention. What is the diagnostic criteria according to international classification? If the AHI is more than 5 and the clear symptoms are there, we diagnose that the patient has the obstructive sleep apnea. Second condition is if the AHI is more than 15 and the assessment without the clinical symptoms. It's also moved towards the OSA. And the third is the clinical importance. It guides the treatment decision and the severity recognition. Now, untreated OSA has serious long-term consequences. First is the metabolic consequences. It includes the type 2 diabetes and the metabolic syndromes due to the hormonal disturbances. Second is the cardiovascular issues. It is associated with increased risk of hypertension, heart diseases, and stroke due to the repeated episodes of low oxygen levels. So this makes early diagnosis and treatment extremely important. Now, sleep apnea doesn't just affect the body, it affects the mind as well. So, first is the cognitive impairment. It can lead towards the cognitive decline, impact the memory, attention, and the overall function due to the chronic sleep deprivation. Second is the psychosocial factors. It includes the depression and anxiety, and it may arise secondary to the effects of sleep apnea. Third is the quality of life. So, when the patient is persistently fatigued and daytime sleepiness, it associates with the OSA and it can severely diminish the quality of life and productivity. So, all of this significantly reduced overall quality of life. Now, what if I told you that a simple device, lifestyle change, or the procedure could stop your airway from collapsing every night and help you wake up refreshed? That's exactly what we will cover in the management of OSA. First, what are the treatment strategies? First is the weight management. Weight loss has demonstrated efficacy in improving OSA symptoms in overweight patients. Second is the CPAP therapy. It is the gold standard treatment for OSA and it maintains the airway patency during sleep. Third, there are many alternative therapies as well. First is the oral appliances, which we can use to serve as an effective non-CPAP options for certain individuals. Most two therapies are most common: mandibular advancement devices and the tongue retaining devices. Fourth one is the lifestyle modification. Encourage patients to sleep in non-supine position can reduce the frequency of apnea events. And the last is the surgical procedures include uvulopalato-pharyngoplasty or the maxillomandibular advancements. It can help to improve the airflow for effective individuals. Now, before we wrap up, let's do a quick review to make sure the key points stuck. Think of it as a little brain check and post your answers in the comment section. Question 1 is, what is the primary function of CPAP in treating apneas? To sedate the patient, to act as a stimulant, to provide the air pressure to keep the airways open, and to monitor the heart rate. Second is, a patient with AHI more than 5 along with the symptoms of daytime sleepiness or an AHI more than 15 regardless of symptoms is usually diagnosed with insomnia, narcolepsy, OSA, or the restless leg syndrome. So kindly comment the answers in comment section box. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment if you want me to make more videos on sleep technology devices. Thank you.